Inanna Returns, Chapter 3, Ninhursag. Ninhursag is also known as the Mother Goddess, the Lady of Life, the Lady of the Mountain, and countless other names of loving affection. A brilliant geneticist and doctor, my great-aunt Nin is the master geneticist of the House of Anu. Nin's mother was a beautiful surgeon whom Anu had fallen in love with on a trip to the planet of healing. Nin's mother was very different in character from Anu, and as Nin grew up, she embodied her mother's impeccable self-discipline and will. Not at all fond of Anu's endless parties, Ninhursag put her passions into the arts of healing and genetic enhancements. She possessed a clear razor-like mind and the heart of an angel. Although my Nin grew up on Nibiru, she accompanied her brothers to Terra to aid in its colonization. Enki and Enlil, the two sons of Anu, had been assigned to bring gold and other useful minerals back to Nibiru. Gold was essential to us because of the imbalances in our atmosphere, brought by our incessant warring. Terra in those days was seen solely as a source of minerals, a mining outpost at the edge of the galaxy. Its inhabitants were the wild creatures who roamed her vast plains, grazing on an abundance of grasses, and the races of the snake people and dragon people who preferred to live in vast tunnels under Terra's crust to protect themselves from the frequent radiation storms and magnetic shifts. Ninhursag, Enki, and Enlil all went to Terra with a sense of excitement and purpose. Because Enlil was the son of Anu and Antu, and the first in line to inherit Anu's power, he was chosen as leader of two groups of Nibiru's astronauts. One group assigned to the satellite ship remained in orbit to monitor the planet, to report any difficulties that might arise from space, and to receive the transit shuttles, for the purpose of eventually colonizing the entire planet. The other group, the majority of our astronauts, went down to Terra to live and work, and these were called the Anunnakis. Enki, the child of Anu and a dragon princess of Terra, was second to Enlil in the line of power from his father. Enki was our master engineer and had begun the mining projects sometime before Enlil's arrival. My family invented sibling rivalry, as you can well imagine. These two brothers with the same father and different mothers constantly argued over every decision to be made. Ninhursag was our chief physician and master geneticist on Terra, and by necessity the family peacemaker. The Anunnaki, our astronauts, who quite happily followed these three children of Anu down to Terra, were all truly excited in the early stages of this grand adventure. Promised riches and land, the Anunnaki were content for a while, but no one was prepared for all that digging. They had never done anything so physical, so repetitious, and working in the gold mine soon became an ominous chore. Enki even tried making up songs to keep their spirits up, but soon these warriors, scientists, and engineers became disgruntled, then angry. And because Palladians have a sort of group mind, their discontent spread like dragon fire. They refused to dig one more ounce. Enlil and Enki were astounded. Zounds! They could always get their fellow Palladians motivated at home. What was to be done? They did not want to be disgraced and look bad in their father Anu's eyes. True to the family's nature, the brothers began to blame each other. Cursing and bickering led to blows, and after a little blood and a few bruises, a solution occurred to them. Many species existed on Terra from which they could extract genetic material to create a race of slave workers. This would solve all their problems and keep the Anunnaki happy. It had been done before on other planets. They announced to crowds of cheering astronauts that the wondrous bulls of Anu had solved all. The mighty Enlil and the great Anki had completed had complete control of the situation. When I think of Ninhursag and Anki alone in the laboratory experimenting with the various genetic material they had collected, I recall a time when they had a terrible quarrel. Nin completely lost control of herself and came close to killing Anki because he was always plotting ways to get an advantage over his brother Enlil. Anki wanted to have a child by their sister. He knew this child, if they were a male, would be considered a rival to Enlil and to the children of Enlil. So Anki approached his sister. No one had ever dared to seduce Nin before. It's not that she wasn't beautiful. My great aunt was very beautiful and kind, but everyone was intimidated by her brilliance, her precise manner, and intense self-discipline. I suppose that Ninhursag had always assumed that one day she would have to marry one of her brothers. Her father Anu had married his sister, as was our custom, so naturally Ninhursag thought of marrying either Enlil or Anki, but Anki's mother, Idi, had persuaded him to marry into her branch of the family on Terra, the dragon race, and Enlil married a nurse with whom he had fallen passionately in love. So there wasn't anyone left on this remote planet whom Ninhursag could consider to be her equal, being pristinely idealistic and headstrong. Nin preferred no one to any she deemed beneath her. Nin was very innocent about men and not skilled in the art of seduction, and she was not anticipating that her married brother would court her and indeed show her such lavish ardor and passion. Anki's polished techniques of pursuit went straight to her head. She was blushing like a schoolgirl. Poor Nin simply wasn't used to being flattered and set up by a professional like Anki, who had seduced so many other women that he didn't have to think twice about his next move. Ninhursag fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I think it was the first time in her feminine ego that her feminine ego had been massaged and she was smitten by powerful hormones. But much to Anki's disappointment, a girl child was produced by the mating. Ninhursag was delighted and lovingly doted on the child. My Nin never met a baby she didn't love. She revered all of life. Anki waited in a noticeable absence until the girl reached sexual maturity. To the shock and amazement of Nin, proceeded to seduce his daughter and also impregnate her. Once again, a female was produced, but this did not stop Anki. As soon as the second female began to ovulate, Anki made advances towards her, determined to produce a male heir. Ninhursag was outraged. She was sickened by the thought of Anki, their father, could defile and prey upon his own naive little girls, and her pride was deeply wounded. Feeling utterly used, Ninhursag angrily determined to put an end to her brother's despicable folly. She brewed an irresistible, delicious, and intoxicating elixir full of deadly, violent herbs. She herself had formulated. As Anki happily drank the liquid, Nin whispered the sacred words of her spell and thus inflicted a powerful curse upon her brother. Anki fell to the ground, cup in hand. Ninhursag coldly and dispassionately watched as the agonizing effects of a long, slow, painful death swept over him. She wanted him to suffer as he had made her and her daughter suffer. She wanted him to understand pain. The miserable Anki began to shrivel up and age rapidly. His skin turned to a putrid yellow. Fearing the worst, Anu, the father of both Ninhursag and Anki, was finally forced to plead with Nin to convince her to relinquish her curse and invoke the healing magic. In time, Anki recovered and begged his sister's forgiveness, but Nin was changed thereafter, and she never again allowed herself to trust in men. If it seems that my family resembles one of those epic soap operas on that's so popular on Terra, you might ask yourself why. In the actual creation of the slave laborers, many mistakes were made, some comical, some horrible, some unspeakable. When at last the proper combination of DNA was found and the first Lulu, the perfect worker, was produced, he was made intelligent enough to take orders, but not smart enough to think for himself or to rebel, and he was to be able to hold a shovel. Among many species existing on Earth at that time was a creature you call Homo erectus, roaming the steppes with gazelles and other animal friends. Members of this genus ate the grasses and vegetation. They possessed the ability to communicate telepathically with the animals and each other. Wild and free, they were at one with nature, wisdom of Terra's frequencies. They were known to us for dismantling the traps we set to capture their animal friends. This human creature and the animals respectfully loved one another. Of all the DNA available to us, that of Homo erectus served us best. Anki volunteered his wife, Ninki, to birth the first Lulu. The genetic material of Homo erectus was implanted in the egg of the Palladian female. The blood of man was mixed with our blood, the blood of the gods, and the genetic potentials were fused. Thus, the human species carries Palladian genetic codes, and our DNA is forever combined with yours. The ovum of the female Anunnaki were used to birth more Lulus until they were endowed with the ability to reproduce themselves. Not everyone in the family wanted the Lulus to be able to reproduce without our help, but it was far easier to let them carry on the process without us. The human species, as you know it, was created through the successful genetic manipulations of Ninhursag and Anki to provide us with slave labor in our gold mines. Those first Lulus, your ancestors, saw us as creators, as gods, and we encouraged such beliefs because it made it easier for us to control them. This is where I came in. A steady stream of fresh laborers was required for their projects by the members of my family and the Anunnaki. As Anu and Antu had instructed me in the arts of love and reproduction, it became my job to educate the astronauts and the Lulus in the most efficient frequencies of sexual experience. I was delighted. To this purpose, I had fabulous temples constructed and I created wonderful ceremonies and rituals. I wanted my great-grandmother Antu to be proud of me. I modified traditional Palladian tantric rituals to suit our purposes on Terra. We had fun in those days. Some might call my ceremonies orgies, but I personally would never refer to my artistic creations in such a crass manner. The word orgy reflects the sad attitude of the present-day culture on Terra toward the most sacred link with Prime Creator. The sexual experience is much more than friction. It is a key to prove the key to your power, the secretion of all the hormonal systems, lifting the energies, merging two beings in sacred union. Reverence for the experience produces healthier babies and attracts a soul similar to the frequency which is generated and emitted. The Lulu's telepathic abilities made them naturals. Those early times were grand indeed. We taught them to never question anything. That brings us to an end of chapter 3 of Inanna Returns. And that was Ninhursag. When we come back, it will be chapter 4 and it will be Enlil. So we'll cover that. Please follow me on Instagram at wisdom_is_. Jah, which is JAH. And that's at Instagram. That's on Instagram. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless you. Good night. That's my Russell Simmons.